This door is made of metal and appears to be reinforced. Someone here really values their security. Number 28. This is where the cleaning lady said the smoker on the balcony lives.
Let's see if anyone's home. Knock on the door.
No one answers.
Looks like the young man we are looking for isn't home. I think our best chance to catch him is in the evening. We should return tomorrow after we have finished with our day's work. How about 9 p.m.? Sound good? The smoker on the balcony. This is why we're here, right? He might know something about the murder. So tomorrow 9 p.m.?
Don't worry. It's mostly all still here. You can remember things. You got this.
It's all right. We don't have to be here 9 p.m. sharp. I just need to write something down in my notebook. Tomorrow evening, right here, apartment number 28.
Damn. Turns out it's quite tricky finding someone in a big apartment building. Don't worry. You'll get him. Remember, tomorrow. He's probably gone for today. A striking woman leans against the cabin top of her sailing boat, smiling as you approach. Her green raincoat glistens with droplets. A silk scarf is tied around her throat.
Good afternoon, officers. I'm Joyce. Joyce L. Messier. I represent the board of Wild Pines, the owners of the harbour. You gentlemen must be from the RCM. Baton, my maiden name. Nothing, honestly. I've said it to every drunk in town, and you're the first one who's responded.
Relax. She meant it in jest.
I'm glad to see you here.
Like steel. There is strength there. If she wanted, she could sink her nails deep into your skin.
I was dispatched to handle a strike, not a lynching. Anything I can do to assist the RCM in this matter, I will, gladly.
That is good to hear, madame. My colleague will take the lead on this interview. I should let you know that he is recovering from an unusual medical episode. Very unusual. But I can assure you of his ultimate competency.
There's a trace of irony in his voice. Mischief, even. This is a tactic.
How interesting. I wish you a swift recovery. In the meanwhile, you have my full cooperation, and the full cooperation of the Wild Pines Group. Why, yes I am. Of course there are. We're on an archipelago. How else are you supposed to get around? Yes, we are. We are on Le Caillou.
Technically, the neighboring Ozone and Fas a la Mer island groups are archipelagos, while La Caillou, by contrast, is a single fertile landmass, the fourth largest island in the world. It is not an archipelago.
Okay, if you want to get technical. The point is, we're all on islands here, and sail is still the most expedient way to get from one island to another, especially when you're in a hurry to resolve a strike. I haven't seen anyone else drive a souped-up Capri Kenema motor carriage either.
Actually, that motor carriage has been specially issued to serve as a patrol and pursuit vehicle. It's for crossing long distances in the greater Revachol industrial harbor. It's not a toy.
Neither is this. A toy, I mean. It's a machine for crossing long distances in the Bay of Revachol, between the city and the islands.
You need to make this lady admit she's only riding around on this boat because she's rich. Before you do, it would be pertinent to ask other questions. Gather more info on this boat of hers.
The boat? No. It is called Cordelati 19 because that's the type of sloop it is. It's a pleasure craft, a 19 pacer. It also happens to be rated for Category 1 racing. Though these days I mainly use it for business. My sloop? I like it a lot. It's the eel's hips, baby.
I'm enjoying this part of the interview. It has so little to do with the murder we're investigating.
Officer, I assure you I'm a highly qualified pleasure craft operator.
The crowns of her teeth are porcelain, white as the boat's hull as she smiles. Her nonchalance might be related to something called the Wayfarer Act, a law that says she doesn't need a license. Sly fox, you're not aggressive enough to harass her further on this.
Oh my, the E word. You mean to say that it's a symbol of conspicuous consumption? That I'm a member of the ruling class?
Detective, may I remind you that Mrs. Messier is a professional negotiator?
Then what does that say? Does it say, docking reserved for residents of Rue de Saint-Ghislain, 33A? 33A? This old proletarian haunt here? As I said, plenty of people drive boats, of all social strata.
She takes a sip.
Okay. Of course.
Nothing happens for quite a while.
As they do.
The thoughts happen inside his brain.
It doesn't.
My, it's as if there's a tiny spinner on the side of his head and he's reeling thoughts out.
Except he isn't.
Of course. Lieutenant, I truly don't understand what is happening here.
I told you his methods are unconventional.
It was quite a while ago, but I think, yes, we were discussing my fast, large, ineluctably middle-class boat. Good. What we do. I'm afraid I don't speak for Wild Pines as a whole. It's a giant undertaking.
There was a touch of discomfort there. She wants to merely represent.
The Pines' core competency is logistics. Container shipping, freight, that sort of thing. See those airships there, blinking? Those are the shipping side of things, and that is the terminal. Another subdivision deals with energy, oil and gas exploration, offshore platforms.
The Wild Pines Group is one of the original Revacholian Indo tribes. Companies awarded royal monopolies by the king, the suzerain himself, centuries ago. The king is long gone, but several of the Indo tribes remain. Saint-Baptiste, LUM, an unknown entity known as Brightest Star.
Why, thank you. I'm not at liberty to discuss the company balance sheet, but I can tell you that last year, the company booked more than 20 billion real in revenue. $20 billion is a large number, but the conglomerate employs 72,000 people. They all need to be paid. Then there are capital improvements, interest payments. A conglomerate the size of the Wild Pines is like a shark. If it stops moving, it will die. Then what becomes of those 72,000 families? It's a tremendous responsibility. They started as an exploration and cargo fleet conducting trade between the Samaran and Insulindian Isolas 250 years ago, when pine ships explored the South Seminese and charted Lomantang on behalf of the suzerain. Centuries of care, deliberation, and madness have gone into this endeavor. Vessels pass through the Great Unrest to re-emerge with apricots in tow. The logic of the system is totalizing. It's taken everything from its employees to build it. You know more than you let on. Certainly it helped, but most of the original Indo tribes have failed or been absorbed. To survive, Wild Pines had to grow and adapt. No suzerain did that. You mean aside from being the terminal's legal owners, who are responsible for moving 8% of the world's cargo? There are no minor cogs in the system. Each terminal must be accounted for, lest the entire system break. Every hiccup in such a system means thousands lose their jobs, the world over. I'm here to assure that doesn't happen.
With your help, hopefully, says her warm tone.
Everything. Right up to, but not including, trade secrets. First, you'd have to repeal the Emergencies Act of Trade in Aliments that gives me the right to silence. It's quite the octopus. Good luck is only kept in place by the vested interests of half the civilized world, including your own.
What the ma'am means is that the Emergencies Act and the RCM both get their authority from the coalition government.
You'd be shooting yourself in the foot.
But I am derailing us. You wanted to know about the strike. I believe the official title is Senior Labor Negotiator. In practice, I'm a grocery clerk. I relay the union's demands to Wild Pines and return with Wild Pines' counteroffer.
And how are the talks going?
They're not. That's the problem. The union stopped all negotiations a week ago, after that awful lynching took place. Now they won't even let me into the harbor. There's a 2-meter 20 racist behemoth blocking the gates. Oh, so you've met him. Has he beguiled you with his inane theories?
My colleague has his peculiarities. Let's not go into this particular one just yet.
Of course. To each their own. Let's say I was not making the kind of progress I'd hoped for when I first arrived.
And when did you first arrive?
I arrived 3 weeks ago. Yes, in the middle of February. The bay was still partially frozen then. I prefer to do these things on site, like the RCM.
But the strike began in December.
I wasn't the original negotiator here. I took over after Mr. Gaumont hit a wall with Mr. Clare, the union boss. Mr. Clare refused to speak with Gaumont despite concessions he'd granted the union in prior negotiations.
This isn't the first time the union has gone on strike.
Heavens no. There have been 2 prior strikes. Both times the union won significant concessions, including overtime pay and a medical plan. This time their demands are more, I guess you could say, aggressive.
Ludicrous even. It's meant.
Mr. Clare told him to... how did he put it? Fuck off, midget. Gaumont is short of stature, you see. Yes. Keep in mind, this is a negotiator Mr. Clare has worked with before, and who was more than fair with him and the union. There are leaflets everywhere, and banners. What did they say again? Every worker, a member of the board.
Most of the workers probably don't know what that means.
In its defense, another said, demand democracy. Pretty tame stuff compared to every worker, a member of the board. It's quite simple, you see. Every time the Wild Pines group makes a decision, about what? About anything really, it needs the signature of each of the 2,200 workers in its Martinez terminal. Just so you understand, this is but one of 22 terminals owned by Wild Pines. Essentially, not only are they kings of the company, they are also kings of the 72,000 employees of Wild Pines Group.
An opening gambit, surely.
They're having a blast. But how can they afford it? After 4 months, my assumption was they would prefer a more practical solution. So I hoped. But this type of opening is usually followed by a more reasonable offer. I've yet to hear one. Just the same nonsensical slogan repeated over and over again. And now, people are getting lynched, I hear. Behind the whirling in rags. A disastrous situation if there ever was one.
Excuse me, from whom did you hear about this lynching?
I first heard it from the bowyer at the gates. The one whose very name advertises his aversion to work. I think he said it was, call me mañana.
This checks out. No, wait. The chief negotiator heard it from a man at the gates. Surely the Wild Pines Group has more effective channels of information. After all, 2,200 people are on strike. This is a big deal for them.
The scabs? You mean the huddled masses of Jamrock come to plead for work where the union refuses to? If they were organized by Wild Pines or its affiliates, then it would be a company secret. I could not share it with you. Not right now, at least.
It's implied. She's open to discussing this matter with you at a later occasion.
Everard Clare is a man of the utmost integrity. If you can say one thing about him, it's that he always puts the interests of the workers first.
She's being sarcastic. Don't take her performance literally.
Of course not. Everard is fantastically corrupt. I imagine he has a thick, viscous goo where you and I have blood.
If you were to prick it with something sharp, you could see it oozing out. A knife, maybe? No, a rapier.
Oh, heavens, no. We get along just fine. Yet, now that you mention it, I can't stop imagining that black treacle just dribbling down his double chin. He is the most corrupt individual I have ever seen, and I deal with men like him for a living. If there is anyone more venal, more irredeemably nepotistic, then it's his twin brother, Edgar. Yes, Edgar looks exactly like his brother, except for that lazy eye. He also talks exactly like Everard does, and when one's term as foreman is up, the other takes over. It's how they circumvent the term limits, you see, with a funny little switcheroo. While in office, they've embezzled God knows how much of their workers' dues. The Débardeurs Union was once a perfectly normal institution. 20 years ago, anyway. It must not have been easy to establish under the Emergency Act, but they did it. I can respect that. Organised labour at its best, as they say. Then something happened in the local chapter elections. The brothers Clare came and transformed it into a... how do you say?
A mob. The debarders are a crime syndicate. Sad as it may be, I suspect we'll be forced to cooperate with them.
Refreshingly honest, officer. The company has tried appeasing in the past, but I'm afraid our concessions have only emboldened Everard and his brother. And your opinion, detective, if I may ask? I'm a curious and talkative person, you see. Would you say the Debardeurs Union is... Indeed, and a hungry one. Sadly, Wild Pines have cooperated with what amounts to a crime syndicate for 2 decades. However much you feed the leech always hungers. I'm glad you asked. There was a woman, the previous forewoman of the Union. She disappeared.
Disappeared?
Yes. On the last day of the local chapter elections, her daughter phoned in and said she wasn't running anymore, or coming to work. Ever. End of story. Downright haunting, if you ask me. The Wild Pines suspected foul play, but what could they do? It was a union matter. The point of the presentation is, these kinds of things happen around the Clares. Watch out when you're dealing with him.
Thank you for your concern, ma'am. We'll be just fine.
Of course. How else can I help? Quite a few things, I'm afraid. The information I'm to share with you includes sensitive trade secrets. For the sake of my employer, I have to ask for your names and badge numbers.
Of course, ma'am. We should have introduced ourselves. I am Lieutenant Kitsuragi from Precinct 57, and this is my colleague from Precinct 41. I'm afraid he doesn't have his badge at the moment. I hope mine will suffice.
How curious. Why is that, Detective? I see. So, are you saying you lost your badge during the course of this episode? I can't hear you, darling. Speak up, please. Oh dear. I suppose this does explain some of the more curious turns in our conversation.
She must have been suspecting something for a while now.
As I said, ma'am, his technique may be very unconventional, but he is an officer of the RCM.
Of course, I sympathize, but I'm afraid I simply can't share anything more until I've seen that badge.
She's a professional negotiator. She should be open to some sort of mutually beneficial arrangement. Feelings will guide the way.
I assure you, it is no small matter for me either. We all share the responsibility for disarming this situation. I hope you have a badge for me as soon as possible. Trust me, officer, I am fully committed to resolving this impasse. This isn't some side gig for me.
She's silent. The wind flaps the sail above her.
Officer. You know, I don't mean to sound cold, but if you want something, you have to give something back. More than just guilt.
You're doing it. Despite your own best efforts, you're still getting in. Somehow.
I'll be frank with you. If I'm going to break protocol, I need to be able to justify it to my superiors. They're going to want to see something tangible. The Union is conducting drug trade out of the harbor. It's an open secret in Martinez. Surely it must not come as a complete surprise to the RCM either. Perhaps it's time to look into it. Or you can find your badge, which honestly seems like a lost cause.
Detective, a word in private before we continue. This is not going quite as I hoped it would, Detective. Honestly, I was expecting you to use your unorthodox technique to keep her off balance, and not volunteer us to be her henchmen. This woman is running circles around us. She might have known about your misplaced badge all along, or she's simply an adept improviser. Either way, we've played straight into her hands.
Maybe this is all her plan. She might have heard about you.
I wouldn't go that far. Her reaction did come off as sincere to me. I think she's just quick to adapt. She's a professional, after all. No, if there is reasonable suspicion, we must investigate. Otherwise, she could claim we're siding with the Union, or that we are on their take. We'd never hear the end of it. What I propose is, we ask her, then we investigate, briefly. But do not share the outcome of this investigation with her. We tell her it's done and demand for her information on the lynching. Oh, that would be fantastic, but do we have the time? The world is large and your badge is 8 by 6 centimeters.
The situation might have changed drastically by the time you locate it. Time is of the essence.
You could request a new one from the station, but that would literally take months.
You're back. Good. What can I help you with? That's the man who was killed. I'm afraid this is a discussion for once we've cleared the lynching question. Better not tie the forestay to the backstay on this. I hope there is something else I can help you with. Of course. I'm glad you asked. There was a woman,
Disappeared?
Yes. On the last day of the local chapter elections, her daughter phoned in and said she wasn't running anymore. Or coming to work. Ever. End of story. Indeed. The company suspects foul play, but there's nothing they could do. It was a union matter. The point of the presentation is, these kinds of things happen around the Clares. Watch out when you're dealing with him.
Thank you for your concern, ma'am. We'll be just fine.
Of course. How else? That's the man who was killed. I'm afraid this is a discussion for once we've cleared the lynching question. Better not tie the forestay to the backstay on this. I hope there is something else I can help you with. It's quite straightforward. Someone is using Terminal B to smuggle raw ingredients from the Samar and Isola into Revachol with the Union's blessing. Wild Pines has suspected it for years.
Ingredients for what, ma'am?
Meth and dextroamphetamine, GBL and various synthetic psychedelics. Honestly, it might be quicker to say what you can't make from the stuff. Yes, after they clear the terminal, we lose track. The actual production is taking place at various sites in and around Jamrock Quarter.
Wild Pine seems to be well apprised of the local drug trade, ma'am. Do you mean to say the Union also produces the product? Sells drugs, I mean?
We're in logistics. It's our business to know. And no. As far as the company knows, the Union does not produce it. They transport the ingredients for a cut. Yes, but you won't get anything out of Evrat and the Dockworkers Union. Still, every...
The handoff. The motor lorries at the roundabout.
Precisely. Someone needs to move the ingredients from the harbour into the city. Once they reach Jamrock, they're distributed to a network of local manufacturers well beyond our grasp. But in transit, they're vulnerable.
How convenient that they're stranded like beached whales at that roundabout.
Perhaps Perhaps you've noticed that a number of lorries are tangled in a traffic jam at the roundabout just now. Interview the drivers who are still hanging about. One of them might be waiting for a crucial shipment.
Her irises are light green, like the river Esperance in bright daylight, upstream where it's clearer.
I'll be explicit. If you find this driver, I will share company secrets with you.
Uncovering Union secrets could also give you an upper hand when dealing with them.
We did, on more than one occasion. Apparently, there's some sort of inter-precinct disagreement about whose jurisdiction this area falls under.
We know the company has launched its own probe into the Union's alleged involvement. We also know it's come up empty. It's not just the RCM. No one's been able to find any hard evidence.
Well, here's your chance, officers. No. We asked East Motor Track to raise the drawbridge. The road company is a partner of one of our subsidiaries. However, this is a limited time opportunity. Once the complaint has been processed by the Trade Committee, they'll have no choice but to lower the drawbridge, and the operation will continue. Thousands of litres of raw ingredients will pour onto the streets of Revachol. Not the east across the river, but the west. The vulnerable, the weary.
Well, at least this solves one mystery.
What is that, Lieutenant?
Why I had to call East Motor Track and beg them to open a drawbridge for me. I'd wondered since I first drove in, on my motor carriage.
I am sorry for the inconvenience, Lieutenant Kisaragi, but we need them trapped here. This is a unique opportunity. I'm sure you understand. How do you think they're financing this strike? There are thousands of unpaid dock workers going strong for the 4th month straight.
There was a shakedown of local businesses preceding the strike. Many were squeezed to bankruptcy to fund it.
With all due respect to these desert cacti, the contents of a few cash registers cannot provide for 2,000 men. The local businesses can scarcely provide for themselves. Precisely. Smuggled out of that very gate at night, most likely, then loaded onto lorries and driven to Jamrock. You simply need to find one driver who will open up to you. The two might even be connected.
Or not. Though, if you have evidence to the contrary, I'm eager to hear it.
As eager as I am to share it, Lieutenant, once the job is done. Yes? Excellent. According to my reports, there are at least 3 lorry drivers lingering near the roundabout. Hopefully one of them will know something. It may come to nothing, or it may just blow the case wide open. I can keep the drawbridge up for a few more days at least. You should have the time you need. In the meantime, let me know if there's any other way I may be of assistance. This reality.
Yes, reality is your side case. An experimental side case.
How truly curious. A sort of philosopher detective.
Aren't all.
Yes, all of them. Except the ones who are philosophers.
Actually, I've heard the analogy made by a blindingly modern school of philosophy called carve. It may not be as far-fetched as it sounds.
Are they now?
A deep synthesis. I'll assist you however I can then. Go ahead.
All right, we're in. I know these all look good, but begin with the first, okay?
We're in Martinez, baby. A casual term of endearment popular among the 50-plus crowd. It's a disco holdover, pay it no heed. Aren't we all?
She refers to your corresponding ages.
Martinez is a district of Revachol. A very small district tucked away near the industrial harbour, north of the 881 and Jamrock. You would be excused for not knowing about it. Unimportant, they say. Forgotten, even. Shelled to smithereens during the Revolution. It has its charms, just not this time of year. I'm not a good ambassador. I've only been here once before, as a teenager. Not a lot has changed. There are ruins, a terminal, fishing boats, reeds, boys with boxy shoulders. This place used to be a province, a workers' resort before the city swallowed it and the artillery did its work. The reeds are the real star of the show here now. The further down the coast, the wilder it gets. It's not really a sea, it's the Bay of Revachol, and the bay feeds into the ocean. Yes, we're on an island in an ocean, the world's largest body of water, the Insulindic.
Known to the early Revacholians as Les Immensités Bleues, the Blue Immensities.
Caillou, as you already know. Imagine a pebble. A smoothed-over pebble amidst a great blue sea, misshapen, cracked. The cracks are the River Esperance. We're in the delta of this river, on the 6th branch, the Martinez distributary.
It is clear this pebble is of enormous value to her, and to humanity at large.
Revachol? Revachol is what you call a city. The great kind. History detective. They built this city to resolve history. Our part in it, at least. Our centuries. The nations of the Occident, or migrant workers from Seminine and Ile-Marat, depending on your creed. In the DeLorean century, 380 years ago. They say it's where the terrible questions of our time will be answered. The tensions are highest, the fault lines deepest. By that I mean conflicts. Ideological conflicts. The stuff of men. We are standing on a fertile, self-sufficient island able to sustain up to 200 million people. In the middle of the Insulindic Ocean, the world's connective tissue. It's where the money is. I think it's fair to say so. Martinez is about...
A collection of tall ghosts behind the water vapor, light reflecting off their glass windows.
22 kilometers from the center of the world. That soldering iron is the bank of the world building. The bottom floors are Insiacom. Coalition government, Insulindian Mission Command.
Silence. She lowers her hand. The water, the light. It's as though you're seeing it for the first time. There is no recognition, only the immensity of the sea and the cold radiating from it.
We are where we are. I have no truer answer to give, unfortunately.
This is one thought you need to complete. Where are you?
Was there something else you wanted to know? I remember something about a lowdown.
This has been informative. Thank you, ma'am. I'm sure my memory-impaired partner has many more questions to ask, about even more fundamental aspects of reality. Might I suggest not asking them all right now? Madame Messier will be here later too, and tomorrow. Isn't that true, ma'am?
Absolutely. My commitment here is long-term.
Oh, of course not. You are already diligent for getting this far, and diligent boys remember where they left off.
Indeed. I'm always at your service. These are unimportant times, Detective. You and I were born after the dust had settled. 1,000th of a second too late. For the big time. The revolution. It's quite easy. Every 100 years or so, our species gets together to decide what's next, who gets shot in the head, and who gets the mineral rights. It's a real kerfuffle. Why, of course. We're talking Duke out Central. Full swing intra-species warfare. No, I would say the apes were neutral. On the other hand, maybe you're right.
It takes time for the apes to change and work. Perhaps what happened here was part of that time and part of that work.
Those would be the communists. Generally speaking, 40 million people got shot in the head during the World Revolution. But the communists, they all got shot in the head. Oh, and the anarchists too. They shot them well. So well, one forgets they even existed.
She likes the totality of it.
Indeed. They piled them in mass graves in Ozon. And, well, that's the last anyone heard of those people. Did they ever? Before they got shot themselves, they shot 2 million people.
Yeah, it was a kerfuffle, all right.
Yes. The Insulindian deluge, they call it. Yes, an acute thiamine deficiency can be exacerbated by alcoholism. Exacerbated means made worse. Oh, lots of people. Even the king got shot in the head, or thrown beneath a horse, or drowned. Accounts differ. It was unceremonious. Just as well, he wasn't actually the king. Just the king's nephew. The real king abdicated and lived out a long and productive life as a venture capitalist in Grade. Yes, King Guillaume had a nose for bad PR. He ran before it. What is the expression? Went down? Anyway, Gil got out alive and his nephew Fricelle got shot in his place. Him and tens of thousands of his wonderfully fascist kingsmen. It was a wild time. The liberals got the mineral rights. And by mineral rights, I mean everything. Liberals are usually middle-class people, Detective, or the remaining gentry, the beneficiaries of the pre-revolutionary arrangement. Some were rich enough to stay with the Constitution, with monarchy. Big mistake. Others bet on the revolution. They were called the ultras, or ultra-liberals. They fared well. They didn't win so much as survive. We were the last ones standing when the war ended. Everyone else got shot in the head, remember?
We. She's one of them. Of course.
To foreign intervention. The coalition. Those people really took the mineral rights. The liberals took everything that wasn't nailed to the ground. The coalition took the ground. The ocean, the laws, and the people. The coalition of nations. Grade, Mesque, Vesper, Messina, Oranje, and Sur-la-Clay, the armed center of the world. They landed here and ended the revolution. It was the moralist thing to do. The moralists believe in keeping everything exactly the way it is. They believe in mineral rights. and not shooting people in the head. At least not in the same manner and volume as the others do. They are the long-standing provisional rulers of Revachol now, the coalition government. This is their zone of control. They embolden the RCM with crumbs of the same law they took. Technically speaking, you are a moralist.
The color of moralism is blue. The official motto of Moral Intern, or Moralist International, is a blue forget-me-not, a piece of grey sky. Unofficial. For a moment, there was hope.
Of course. Not easy to be moderate about head shooting in your line of work.
Rooty tooty, pointy shooty.
That's the way of history. The turn of the century revolution. The revolution began in '02 on the Isla of Grad, though by the end nearly the whole world had gotten involved. It wasn't a who, but a what. A pandemic of Zarat, a particularly virulent prion disease, which the authorities in Grad proved unable to contain. Then Mazov came along and overthrew the government. It made people overthrow their governments. Of course not. It was a highly infectious microorganism that destroyed brain tissue. The actual causes of the revolution were material. The pandemic only provided the spark.
It was a funny time in history. They discovered transistors and rock music, but they didn't know anything about prions. Nobody did.
From Revachol and Grad? Not far. The world managed to cauterize itself. Mazov's government was overthrown in '08, and the coalition crushed the Revachol commune 2 years later. It was the end. Why? You and I, officer. Our lives in the zone of control. A city-state divided into free market zones under the everlasting interregnum of the Coalition of Nations, and you, of course, the citizens' militia. The Zone of Control is the third incarnation of Revachol, after the failure of the suzerain and the commune. Modernity. They developed the marvels of the inter-islary communication, telematic milieus, radiation, colored plastics. Meanwhile, in Revachol West, the aftermath continues for the 5th decade.
51 minus 8 equals 43.
Time flies. The 20s saw a decade of urban war, west of the river leveled, offshore platforms in flames. Still, it's regarded as an improvement on what came before. '08 to '19 was simply hell. The 30s? Things settled down in the 30s. Revachol East transformed itself into the world's largest tax haven, with the international community's blessing. For the first time in a long time, it seemed like things were going somewhere. No, it was a market mirage fueled by cocaine and quantitative easing. The 40s dispelled it like a cold splash, an Isla-wide hangover, you might say. And here we are. Welcome to reality, baby.
For her to be where she is, Wild Pines Group must have picked the right side.
They are what they are. Who knows? An afterbloom may yet come. Anyway, enough sentimentality. Is there anything else you want to know? Glad to have been of assistance. The little that I know. Anything else? Of course, Detective. Take care.